Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Bill Flynn. Those of you who know the show Grace Under Pressure know that it's what we focus on are sometimes called the soft stuff, the squishy stuff, the caring, the compassion, the commitment we feel toward one another. And when you do it, care for others, as Bill Flynn, you will learn, does it as a leader, you bring people together for common cause and you energize the organization. Bill, it's a pleasure to have you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here. So looking forward to doing this.
Great. I want to tell everybody about you. I love the first line of your bio because you say Bill Flynn has collaborated with Alan Mulally, pitched Steve Jobs, and worked for a lot of companies, but also experienced some failure. So quite a bit of candor and honesty in one sentence. You've been called the pragmatic Simon Sinek, optimist and an operator. And I love the emphasis on operator. In other words, you know how to make things happen. So you are a very purposeful you are a purposeful person, a purposeful leader, and you help people gain clarity around their own purpose. So you've worked for lots of organizations, you've started many yourself, and you help entrepreneurs do it too. We're going to talk about your best-selling book now, which is called Further, Faster, The Vital Few Steps That Take the Guesswork Out of Growth. Welcome, Bill. It's an honor to have you.
It's an honor to be here, John. Looking forward to it. Let's do it.
So, as the statistics tell us that most businesses, or at least 50%, fail within 5 years, and another 75% don't make it to their 15th anniversary. Why is that, Bill?
I wish I knew the absolute answer to that, because then I would tell everyone.
Well, okay, we'll just call it quits today.
All right, thank you. I have a few theories, and there are a few things that I think underpin that, and they're really around how we as human beings are. There are 2 or 3 biases that I've come across. One is called the status quo bias, which is that we like the status quo. Our brain loves the status quo. It does not like change. It fights change, and often outside of our conscious awareness. There's also something called the experience and the expedience bias. And I think those play as well. Experience, obviously, hey, it works for me, it worked for them, it should work. And expedience is whatever sounds most reasonable is what we should do. And Correct. To me, if most businesses fail, you shouldn't follow what everyone says is reasonable, because that's probably not the recipe for success, because it's really the few that thrive. You want to listen to the ones that do it differently than everyone else, not the ones that do it like everyone else.
Great. Well, I want to stop you here because you said something interesting, because you are an entrepreneur and you work with entrepreneurs, and you say that most of us don't like change. My perception of an entrepreneur is he or she loves change.
Yeah, and I think love is a great word there. They love their idea. That doesn't necessarily mean they love change and all change, etc. I found that most founders, I've worked with dozens, if not hundreds of founders, and most founders fall in love with their idea. And they make a fatal mistake sometimes, which is that they try to prove that their great idea is correct. And that's the exact opposite thing that you should be doing. You should apply what's called the scientific method, which is you come up with a hypothesis or a theory, and you try to disprove it. And if you cannot disprove it, so gravity is a theory which is yet to be disproved. So far, so good. Same thing with an idea. If you have a great idea and no one you can't disprove that it's a good idea, at least for that constituency, then you're onto something and you should keep going.
I love this application of the scientific method, and I haven't heard it applied to entrepreneurship. So how does one disprove a concept, an idea for a business?
Sure. There are 2 methods that I love. One is called customer discovery or customer development, and the other is called jobs to be done. And they are methods that are used to take your idea and really try to figure out if it's an idea that solving a problem that's worth solving, and solving it in a way that enough people will pay enough money to make it a real business. And generally what you do is you narrow down your focus. You pick a very narrow set of customers. You try to narrow the focus of the idea, and then you start from there. Because if you make it really broad and wide, you can rationalize that it's going to work very well. But if you sort of narrow it down, that's how most really good hypotheses are applied with the scientific method is you narrow it down. And then if you can't disprove that, then you start to go to other areas and broaden it a little bit. So that's how the really good ideas come about, at least the way I've read.
You have a concept that you call the core customer, and you say that a core customer is 16 times more valuable than an ordinary customer. Please explain what a core customer is and why are they so valuable?
Sure. So a core customer is your best customer. The way you can figure out your core customer, and I had some writing done on this, is that I recommend that you take your list of customers, maybe over the last year or 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is, some reasonable amount of time based on the kind of business you have and the sales cycle you have. And you list them all out. And then you order them by 3 things. One is they love us, meaning they just love you. You can hear their smile on the phone. They're referring people to you without you even knowing. They're not arguing about price. They totally see the value of what you do. They're probably thinking secretly, I'm not sure, I would pay more for this.
That's for you, Bill. I know they would pay more for you.
Absolutely. You love them, right? They're wonderful to work with. They're references when you need them, etc. And then you order them by profit. And if you do that, you'll find very often, not for every client, not for every business, but very often, somewhere between 80 and 90% of all your profit will come from 10 or 20% of all of your customers.
Sure.
That's the Pareto principle, or the law of the vital few, right? Colloquially known as the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
So if you take the 80-20 rule and apply it to the 100%, that means that a very small percentage of your business, your profit, is from these people. And if you do the math out, that's where the 16x comes from. If you take the 20% of customers, 80% of profit, and you work that out, the difference between the top group and the bottom group is 16x.
That's pretty good. Now, I want to stop you here because I know you work with startups. So, Bill, what if I don't have any customers?
Yeah, so that's when you have your idea, right? And you come up with a really cool idea. And you go try to find a customer. You say, oh, this will apply to this kind of customer. Maybe, there was a company a number of years ago called Winterhalter, I think, and they made dishwashers. And they were trying to figure out, it was a very flooded market, lots of dishwashers. They said, what is the most underserved constituency in the dishwasher market? And they found it was the high-end restaurants. And there were lots of complaints from high-end restaurants that the dishwashers that they had didn't clean the plates well, didn't clean the dishes, and they had to clean them by hand after the fact. So they went in this market and they talked to them and they said, what are your problems? And they made a really good dishwasher, and it cleaned the plates much better than others. And that's where they started. Now, interestingly enough, they found that because of what they did, one of the things they do is they raised the temperature of the water, and it melted the dishwashing detergent before it could do its full chemical impact on the plates. So then they had to make their own dishwashing liquid that didn't melt at high temperatures. So they really understood the problem, and they went deeper and deeper and deeper and solved it really well. I think now they do more than just high-end restaurants. They've sort of done a bowling pin strategy of Mr. Moore and gone out there. But that's a really good example. Find a problem that's worth solving for people who really care about the problem, and that's how you start.
Well, I think in our world, in consulting, coaching, I always look for the pain. What is causing you the pain, and how can we use our services to help you address that? So I think that's, and an entrepreneur would be doing the same kind of thing. Agree?
Agreed. So, totally agree. Yep.
Great. So there's something that you have something about itemization of what leaders ignore, or I mean, not ignore, but they don't pay enough attention to. I love the statement you say, leaders rely too much on effort, luck, timing, and force of will. So what about the effort? Because I'm working really hard, Bill. So what's the problem with that?
So the problem is, if you're a certain size, you have to be a player coach, right? It's just, you have no choice. There are only a few of you or whatever. But at some point, if you're going to keep growing, if you want to have a lifestyle business, that's perfectly fine. You want to make pizza or, install blinds or whatever you want to do, then you're probably going to have to be the worker as well as the manager. But
sure.
But I generally work with people who want to grow. I'm not sure what your general constituency is.
No, I'm only work with people who want to get small. No.
Awesome. Good job.
It's a new niche, Bill. Try it.
So if you want to grow, eventually you have to understand that your job is no longer the product that you're making. Your job and the product that you're trying to create is the business. And so you have to create a business that will work in the future. And that's an innovation or an insight or creation model. Right. It's really a design model. And design is about thinking, not about doing. And we don't really, as human beings, we don't think well when we're doing. So I'll ask, like I ask lots of people, when do you get your best ideas? What are you doing, John, when these flashes of insight come to you?
Well, I mean, I'm not working at my job. I might be playing piano. It might be exercise. It might be playing golf. Something where I'm not physically engaged, or excuse me, mentally engaged with my clients or something like that.
Yeah. So my guess is it's probably not a hard piece. It's not probably not a Rachmaninoff or something that we play. It's something that you can play forever.
I can't play. I can tell you stories about Rachmaninoff. I mean, not the gentleman, but my inability to play that. No. I'm way below the rock.
Got it. Most people say in the shower, running. Generally, it's when your mind is quiet. And there's something in neuroscience called the edge effect. And that's really what happens is an insight is literally a physical change in your brain where two neurons connect that were not connected before. And that almost always happens when your brain is relaxing and you're in thinking mode. And so creation is a thinking mode process. So that's why I tell my clients all the time is you need to fire yourself from the day-to-day. That's your first job, is start to fire yourself from the day-to-day. You might not fire yourself from the entirety of the day-to-day. But I experienced this myself. I had a situation where I had a turnaround and we had lots of things to do. And eventually I engaged my team. We fixed the problem. And I knew that things were going well when my day was basically over by 11 o'clock in the morning. I had no more meetings. I had no more reports to do. I could walk around. I could then go to conferences and do other things and think. And that's when the business really started to take off. That's when we started to do well. And that's generally what you hear from most leaders. Are you familiar with HubSpot?
I know what it is. Yes.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I'm friends with Brian Halligan, who's the CEO and one of the founders, but he's a local guy here in Boston, and we know each other. We run across each other a little bit, and we're connected. And I once sent him a note because they went from zero to like $450 million in 8 years or something, some crazy astronomical thing. And I said, can you account for this? Like, what's the one thing that if you could say was the one thing that had the biggest impact on this? And he wrote me back immediately. And he said, every Friday, he said, I stay home and I think, where's the business going? How can I be a better server to my leader, to my team? He said that is probably the one biggest thing that I would do, which I thought was really phenomenal and supports.
I'm so glad you said that, Bill, because it's something that I always encourage my coaching clients, and that is to make time for reflection. And I learned this from a wonderful man. I'm speaking to you from Ann Arbor, Michigan. His name was Skip LaFaux. And Skip was a GM executive. As a matter of fact, the man that built the Saturn brand and ran it both as an almost semi-autonomous unit. And Skip was worshipped by people who worked for him. Everybody liked him, an extraordinary leader and a very successful one. But he always said, he wrote an article once, it was for Leader to Leader, Francis Hesselbein's journal, about reflection. And I interviewed him about it. And I said, Skip, you're a busy guy. How do you make time for reflection? And he looked at me like I had two heads, Bill. And he said, you put it on your calendar, just like your executive. So you have to make time to think, to gain perspective. So that's such a good reminder. I don't think we hear that enough because we're so busy doing, as you would say, correct? So
yep, so busy doing.
And I want to pick up on something I said flippantly about helping businesses grow smaller. There is a virtue in that concept of, and you must have this conversation a lot with entrepreneurs about focusing on what you do well as opposed to everything. So what's your advice on that for, we could do this, we could do that?
Yeah. So there's a guy who's been around for a while. His name is Gerber. He wrote E-Myth, and he came up with something called the growth paradox, right? Is you think growth is your goal. And there's a great quote from, I think his name is Edward Abbey, which is, growth for growth's sake is the ideology of a cancer cell.
Interesting.
Many cancer cells kill their host, and you don't want to do that, right? That's why most businesses die. So I focus on cash in terms of a financial metric. If you're going to do anything, it's not revenue, because revenue is vanity, right? Revenue is something you brag about, and it's certainly fine if you want to tell a reporter or to your brother-in-law at a party or whatever. That's perfectly fine, but it's not real. It doesn't really show you the health of the business. You can have $100 million business, but it costs you $100 million to run it. You've made zero money. Now, you've employed lots of people, you've done lots of things, but if COVID happens, or 2008 happens, or 9/11 happens, you're in trouble, because you don't have any cash to rely on, because 20 or 30 or 40% of your business might just go away overnight. So cash is the primary financial metric that I focus on from all the businesses that I have, because growth costs money, and you have to invest in growth ahead of it. So you have to have the money or access to the money so you can grow.
Okay, let's define it, because you say growth is the financial metric, at least in growth metric. Okay, so how do you measure it if you're still, you've got your venture capital and you're growing, and where does cash come in, and how valuable is it as a metric? Because, as some businesses run a loss for a period of time, and maybe there is no real cash. So how do you square that, Bill, or do you?
Yeah. So there's access to cash, one of which is a third party. There are different kinds of third parties, right? There's your family and friends. There's a bank. Then there's investors. And what I advise my clients is, as soon as you have investors invest in your company, you have made the decision to sell your company, either in whole or in part. Because guess what? Your investors want their money back and then some. They generally want it between 5 and 8 years from when they give it to you. Now, banks, they certainly want their money back, but it's on some schedule, right? So they'll just take it as you go. And family and friends sometimes don't expect the money back, ever. So it depends on the source of cash. I always advise, whenever possible, you should be the only source of your cash, or your customers really should be the source of your own cash. If you can generate cash from your customers, again, that's why I focus on those 16X guys, right? Because if you get one customer that brings you the same profit as your best customers, that's like bringing on 8 or 9 other lesser customers. So much easier to bring on one, hopefully, than 9 or 10 or 8 to 10, right?
Okay, so, I mean, that's great, and it sounds wonderful, and I like that. But getting that, quote, cash cow customer, could that not be elusive and maybe lead you in a wrong direction or something? Or what would you?
So if the market is shifted, then yes, you're going the wrong direction. But if the market hasn't shifted and you've done your research, you've either done your jobs to be done or customer development, customer discovery, it is always in your best interest to really understand why your best customer buys from you. We don't spend any time here at all. When I go to leaders, so I was a Vistage speaker for a number of years, so I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of leaders, and I always ask them the same question. And it's around strategy, because strategy is basically, how do I differentiate myself from others in the market? So my best customer will say, oh, you're really the only choice for me for this thing, right? Southwest is probably a great example. So when I travel for myself, I almost always fly Southwest because I'm paying for it. And so there are lots of options. They're not always the cheapest, but there's lots of options, and they're relatively inexpensive. If I travel for someone else, for a client or whatever, I travel whatever's the fastest way to get there. Not always worrying about the price. So I'm the core customer of Southwest when it's for me. And they know that, right? So they're trying to make their business effective for me. So that's their strategy, right? Their strategy is to try to get someone who is looking for a certain price point. And I asked them, so if I asked all your leaders like on Monday morning when you sit around the table at 10 o'clock and you go over, you have your 2-hour weekly meeting with them. And I came in and asked all of them to write down the following, which is, what is our current company strategy? And asked them to write it down and read it out loud. Now, this is the thing that gets your best customers. They almost all look at me and they laugh or they smile and they say they'd be all over the place. And I said, yes, because they're literally not on the same page, and they're figuratively not on the same page. And you need to be on the same page if you want to have a strategy that works, which is focusing on your best customers. So then we talk about how do we do that? And you use like a jobs to be done, where there are generally reasons why businesses buy from you. And I have a client that is one of my best clients. They're a small company. They're probably $5-10 million. They could be a $50 million company, I think. And I went into them once and I said, who's your best customer? Or why does your best customer buy from you? And they're a lead generation company. They said, oh, really easy. It's for meetings and for leads. And I said, really? I said, and so I looked at the head of sales who's been there 6 years. And I said, John, you've been here a long time. He's very empathetic. He talks to his customers. He's friends with some of these people. I said, John, when you get that relationship with someone and you chat with them about, and they say, really why they buy from you, what do they say when they really are vulnerable to you and tell you? And he took a second and he thought about it. And he said, you know what I hear most often is, you know what, John, you just get sales off my back. I said, that's a reason, right? That's an emotional reason.
That's the pain. That's the pain.
Now, you happen to you do it by giving them meetings and leads, but the real reason they buy from you, the top of the stack, is they just don't want to deal with the salespeople. They just don't want to be complaining. They want them to be happy and go away. That's a good reason. So that's what I try to get people to think about.
Great. Now, you have something which is in the human side of this, and you call it the confidence factor. Positive, negative, or how does it play a role, Bill? So
confidence is the confident. You're confident because you've thought through as much as you can. Predicting the future is really hard. We're bad at it as human beings. And what I say to people is, you're not really predicting the future, you're creating the future, right? I think it was Abraham Lincoln or someone like that said, the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself. So we plan out, I have the long-term vision of the founder or the head of the whatever and saying, we want to be this someday. We don't know what we want to be. We won't know when it will be, but this is sort of what it looks like. And then we say, okay, in 3 years, what does that look like in 3 years? And we break 3 years down into very specific bits. And I go through 6 or 7 different sets of exercises where they're breaking out by quarter. They're picking up the 3, 4, 5 different differentiators in their strategy. What do they look like? How well are they supporting them right now? What do they have to work on? What do they have to create, which they don't have yet? And then I say, okay, great. Now we know what the 5 differentiators are. Let's break that down by quarter. How are we building that? So at the end of 3 years or 2 years or whatever, we have those differentiators as well done as possible.
And then we say, great. Just to stop here for 1 second. Yeah. So when you're speaking differentiators, that's what would differentiate this business from the competition. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And it's typically more than one. It's the combination of things that you do, not the one thing that you do. Because if you do one thing, eventually your competitors are going to figure it out and just copy you. And again, back to Southwest, is a really great example. Is that Southwest has been doing this since the 70s. They basically have just made their business better and better and better. But it's the same business they've always had, which was their core customer at the beginning wasn't someone else flying. It was a Greyhound bus person. They were trying to get them to fly instead of take the bus. Now, John, you and I are both old enough to know this. A long time ago, the airline industry was regulated. So when they first started, they only had 3 cities, which was Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston. So they were trying to get those people, and that's about a 3 to 4 hour bus ride to each one. They were trying to get them to fly instead. So they had really cheap. They were like $10-20 a flight, something like that, a long time ago. And then, years later, they start to become bigger and bigger, and now it's deregulated. Now they can serve the entire United States. And then people like Eastern, which isn't around anymore, TWA, which isn't around anymore, Pan Am, which isn't around anymore, and you've got Delta, American, et cetera, said, holy cow, what's going on with this Southwest people? We have to beat them. So Delta created Song, Continental created Continental Light, United created TED. Do they exist anymore? They do not,
Yeah.
because they couldn't copy everything. They copied all the stuff they knew, right? Which was all the stuff, you get on the plane a certain way, there's no seat stuff, etc. You entertain them, it's fun. They did all that stuff. Didn't work. So that,
I'm related to our business, and then your great book, and what is it, and it's a step-by-step analysis, and do the plans. And so people sometimes come to me, and I'm sure they come to you, and they say, well, Bill, this is all your good ideas. Can't somebody just take it? And you go, well, yes, sure, that's why you write a book, but they don't have the you factor, which is you. So what is it that you think you bring to your customers that maybe is different?
Well, I spent months figuring out what kind of name I wanted to have. And I was very deliberate in saying Catalyst Growth Advisors, because I'm a catalyst. I'm an accelerant. I say I'm not any smarter than anybody else. This is all management science, which is 100 years old. This is McGregor, Drucker, Deming, Schein, Collins, Porter. Name your thought leader of the last 100 years. They're all doing the same stuff. Now, for some reason, most people don't follow it. I say, look, you can buy the books, you can do this kind of stuff, you can get Scaling Up or EOS or whatever and follow their methodology, and you can do it. It'll just take longer. You'll make mistakes. I often take over customers that said, oh, we tried the Scaling Up thing, but it didn't work for us. And then I come in, I said, tell me what you did. And there's a thing in Scaling Up, which is a one-page plan. I said, well, how did you do the one-page plan? And the CEO said, oh, well, I just downloaded it and I filled it out. And I told everybody, hey, we're going to do this. I said, that's not the point. The point is to have the conversations about filling it out, and you fill it out together and have the debate and discussion and et cetera. And you come up with better ideas than you just writing everything down.
And I'll throw in a thing here. I think that your presence, and others like you, but especially yours, because you said this several times when you meet with your clients, it's a group of them that you get together, and you are your term, you're catalytic. So could they do it themselves? Maybe, but it would take longer. So you are truly that accelerant.
That's me. I'm just gas on the fire.
That's good. Well, Bill, we are racing along here very quickly. But I always ask all of our guests to share a story of grace. And I know you have one. So what would you like to share?
Yeah, I have sort of bookends, and they're both quick. So when I was 23 years old, I went to Smuggler's Notch, which is in northern Vermont, and we were skiing. But at night, you could go and do some other activities. And there was an activity called broom ball. And I'm a hockey player, John. I played hockey in college. I played against NHL players. I'm a decent hockey player.
Wow.
But I played broom ball, and I wasn't very good. And my team wasn't very good, and we were losing. And I got more angry and more angry. And some guy just sort of jostled me, and I cross-checked him in the face. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, I said, I never want to be so out of control of my emotions ever again that I would physically harm another human being. So fast forward about 5 or 6 years, and I'm in a hockey game, and my goalie is having trouble with the puck. So if you're a defenseman and your goalie is having trouble, you generally try to protect him. So I turned my back to everyone else, leaned over my goalie, and just got big. I spread out my legs, I spread out my arms, and so he had time to control the puck. One of the other players came up from behind me and took me out, and somehow I flipped around, landed on my back, and I'm staring up at this guy who's got fire coming out of his nose and his ears, etc. And he's looking down at me like, okay, try something. And I looked up at him and I said, you know what? You are not getting a Christmas card from me this year. And he looked at me, he had no idea what to do, and he skated away. I said, so I think that's how I somehow figured out how to have a little more grace in my life.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. We've heard lots of stories on grace when the guests I've had, but I haven't had one from hockey. And shame on me, I didn't know your background in hockey. I come from an area which is Ann Arbor, which has a storied Michigan team, and of course near Detroit with the Red Wings. And so that's wonderful. So Bill, how can people find you? So
the best for anything, it's to go to my website, which is catalystgrowthadvisors.com. My contact info is on there. You can actually download my book for free from there, or you can certainly get it from Amazon or Audible. I do a blog post twice a month. So there's 135 of them on there you can download. They're very instructive, very prescriptive, and short. If it takes you more than 2 minutes to read my blog post, it's too long. And there's always something to do. So go to catalystgrowthadvisors.com.
Well, I'm going to say, Bill, your generosity is your grace. So you may be, it's not limited to the ice looking face up at someone that floored you. You're a generous man. You share your time, and I know you're highly thought of by your colleagues. Bill, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thanks for making time for me today. So
thanks, John. I appreciate being on.